This game's going to be important. Regardless if it's a viral success in the West or not, it's going to show game developers that you can make games with a spread of varieties of contents and activities and toys to give players, and it can be cohesive and work and be its own special thing. And also at the same time, you can just create multiple different game modes with singular focuses to have that production quality and to give players who want to do those specific things that experience. Where Winds Meet is an MMO that's kind of also not an MMO and also kind of just totally a single player game, but also it is a crossing of rivers of content that it itself needs to be that way because that is how this story, this world is really built. No, it's not just Kung Fu. There is an entire sort of lifestyle that comes with playing this game. It is immersive in its fantastical video game arcadey sense that is totally different sensibilities from Western games. So with that hook out of the way, let's go ahead and run down the facts, what we know about it, and what we hope for with Where Winds Meet. So let's start with the hard facts, and hopefully we can follow along here because it's some weird stuff. We're not really used to it, especially in the modern era of online gaming. So quickly running it down, friends and family, there is a story world. This is a solo experience, except sometimes when you choose not to, or maybe if you get invaded. It's kind of Souls-like. You can actually co-op for most of the content, I believe, up to 4 players. There might be some limitations here and there on that. It is your story instance, and so you progress your story because that's your world there, and you can invite friends for that. There should be some sort of gated progression moments, likely, but that's not even uncommon in pure co-op games, supposedly, such as Monster Hunter Wilds, and it probably rhymes a little bit with like Final Fantasy XIV, but honestly, this actually feels and seems more cohesively multiplayer than even MMOs or dedicated co-op games. So in this, I think it's really awesome. Think about it. This game, looking from the gameplay, it kind of almost rhymes with like Hogwarts Legacy, but imagine if Hogwarts Legacy also could be co-op if you wanted to, at least for most of it. That sounds really great to me. Now, also we have the Jianghu world, which I hope I'm pronouncing those well. I'm trying to give respect because I'm very excited for this, but if anybody wants to correct or even elucidate these terms, there is a lot of depth and cultural richness when it comes to this style of game, and I cannot stress that enough, that this game represents a lifestyle and a totally unique mythology and sort of like, I guess, Chinese drama style. There's a lot of going on here, so if anybody wants to jump in the comments, please do, and maybe we can do our own dedicated video on just like wuxia and Jianghu and this sort of stuff. Anyways, there is the Jianghu world. This is the MMO portion that's going to have raids and guilds, open PvP, professions, even a crime system. And when we talk about the professions and the crime system, this is actually very important to the incorporation and sort of like the cross breeding of experiences, because that's like the whole point of this kind of game, is like you're gonna see people who aren't just murder hoboing around. It's not just run around in, I guess, Black Desert Online, where yeah, there's kung fu and there's action combat inside of Black Desert Online, but it is a totally different genre. In fact, I'd even argue that while maybe the sentiment overall is that this isn't a real MMO, it kind of has everything an MMO needs, and this cross-pollination of content creates a liveliness and an interest that is unique and honestly kind of genre defining. I haven't really touched something like this since Age of Wushu proper, even though I played a lot of Kung Fu games and watched a lot of Kung Fu or wuxia content. It's like this game, I think, is going to be the one that really brings it to life for me, because it's not just a wrapper or an aesthetic. This isn't just simply Chinese mythology. It's not just simply like, oh, instead of this type of magic, it's this type of magic. It's utterly in a totally different type of ecosystem of gameplay loops. Now, it is always online. Just keep that in mind, guys. Even though it's not like a real MMO, it is going to be always online. So however you feel about that, but in the end, I do want to play for this hybrid mixing and matching of like sometimes solo, sometimes co-op, sometimes MMO experience. I think we probably want that, but, you know, depending on how you feel, it could be kind of weird. The overall sentiment is like, you know, it can feel like renting a game. Now, it is free to play, though. Like, believe it or not, what you've seen so far, minutes in, I'm sure you can tell that it's a little bit AAA. It's a little bit beautiful. This is clearly a well-endeavored export from China, and it is actually free to play. Not only free to play, but it's a cosmetic-oriented cash shop. Now, the cosmetics in the cash shop does have gacha elements, but it's cosmetic and it's free to play, and there's going to be like 100 to 200 hours, depending, maybe even more with the different game modes and, versions and variations of play. This just looks like a lot of bang for buck, okay? I think it kind of is reminding a little bit of Genshin Impact when that came out in the West, and everyone kind of really loved that, but still, a gacha game, right? This seems one step even further than that, which is really exciting. Honestly, it's not even rare to find comments on Reddit or YouTube videos saying like, how is this free to play? And just a little side tangent, the very first MMO game that I ever professionally reviewed for Free MMO Station was a free-to-play MMO called Age of Wushu, and this is absolutely bringing me back, and it's showing how far we've come with modern monetization, with modern game design, and really just like overall as players, as a culture, we're learning how to play these games, how to ingest them, and how to properly enjoy them. I think this is releasing at the right time, especially with a lot of MMOs being scams, not releasing, or New World getting canceled, and everyone's sort of fragmented, and we want this interesting new fantasy isekai, like bring me to a new world kind of experience. This out of nowhere, where winds meet. This is where I'm meeting. This is where we're meeting. Let's join me in the Discord, the Video Game Party Club. Let's play this game together and let's have a great time. Or let's at least enjoy the experiment for what it is. Regardless of good or bad, I think it's gonna do something. Okay, so the setting in the world and the design, I think you can kind of tell from the gameplay footage, but it's a little different. So it is sort of a historical period. It is the 5 dynasties, the 10 kingdoms, which is 10th century China. Now, Chinese players do praise the accuracy and the cultural grounding, but it is a wuxia game as well, and that's a little confusing. I guess, in a way, if you think modern fantasy, well, as in modern, as in Harry Potter or World of Warcraft or the Tolkien-esque elements, that's very European, and it's set sort of within a certain time period, Middle Ages to maybe the 1800s, early 1900s. That's sort of where that's stuck in our minds, but this is specifically Asiatic, and so, but it's also wuxia. Wuxia is a very unique thing that I would love to dive into more as I become more educated, but if somebody would like to let me know in the comments below, that would be great. But in this game, there's going to be wuxia traversal. So in a lot of games you might have seen where you can, the wall running, the gliding, the rooftop flowing. This is very kung fu movie, qigong movement. It's awesome, okay? But I think in a lot of games, it's pure cinema, or in a lot of games, it's just kind of neat. In this game, it does seem like it's a proper element of the living world. This is a world that's built on the idea of this just being a power system. Similarly, if you go to the wizarding world, if you go to Hogwarts, everyone is using magic and it invades the culture, it permeates everything that you do. It's going to be like that. So it's not just simply like China and then everyone's kung fu fighting. It's really its own mythology in itself without having a tremendous amount of literal magic or multiversal stuff. So I don't know if you want to call this soft magic or whatever. It's really its own thing and it really deserves its respect. Probably the best way to go into this game is honestly just with wide eyes, just forget everything you know about what an MMO should be or an ARPG or Souls-like. It's gonna be all of those things, none of those things. It's just its own thing. So on that, the wuxia basically, it's like the combat. It's gonna be the kung fu stuff. So what are we actually doing? What are the classes? Who are we fighting? It's gonna be not class-based, not mage magic-based. It's going to be on the weapons. The weapons are really going to define kind of your class. This is going to probably remind a little bit of Monster Hunter, but swords, spears, twin blades, umbrellas, whips, bows, and fans. Now, if bows aren't its own dedicated weapon, at least yet, I don't know if they'll add that. It's more kind of a fanfare thing. It's like a wand almost, but swords and spears, twin blades, umbrellas, this is all very unique to, I think, Chinese martial arts. And of course, the movement, the abilities, and occasionally you do see characters like this in hero shooters or League of Legends or rarely fighting games, and especially in some MMOs, they'll touch on this. Black Desert Online has a couple of these characters. You know that they are wuxia characters basically out the gate. They are just way more whatever this is. It is something a little special. Now, luckily, we actually have had a couple of wins come out from China, like Black Myth Wukong, which itself is more of a Souls-like, but I'm really excited to play more of this, because whenever I had played wuxia-style games, I tended to play in a certain way that was very Euro fantasy focused, maybe even playing the mages, maybe playing like the great sword characters, but this game really is hitting so home with not just, again, the aesthetic of it, but the entire lifestyle of what it means to be this type of character. So combat style, it's flashy, dude. It's reactive, you know, parries and dodges and all the other things. I don't even know if we can really classify these as those elements, but effectively in game design, yeah, it's gonna be parries, it's gonna be rolls, but it's just gonna look way cooler, way more kung fu fighting. I think I almost want to use the word poetic, because in a lot of European games, it's very like A, B. You do the thing, you shoot the fireball, but in wuxia, it's almost like there's like movement, there is like a dance to it all. It's almost like dancing magical combat, to put it in its most barbarian form. But what's really interesting about this game and similar titles, maybe like Age of Wushu, is that it's not just combat. Combat is a portion of the game, and technically you could say that about a lot of MMOs or, I don't know, action RPGs sometimes, but no, this game really bleeds together the idea of like life skilling and professions, crime and bounty, and guild specializations as well, regardless also of just the story and your character and what you're doing throughout the world. So interestingly enough, right out of the gate, you can be a musician, you can be a doctor, which actually has real ramifications. I mean, how many MMOs can you think of that have like permanent damage? So you don't just like have damage like a health bar, you also have like inflictions that you have to have a doctor, maybe a player that can heal those. Merchants, of course, bodyguards, craftsmen. The sentiment overall is that it makes the Jianghu feel like a community, not just combat, which is, again, necessary for that Jianghu feel, like for that dramatic world, this sort of mythological sort of martial arts underworld that is popular in Chinese dramas. There's the crime bounty system as well, so you can become wanted, be hunted by players. That's always fun. There's a literal prison. And again, there's notes of this that has been in some very niche Chinese games that really did not pop off in the West. But I just got a feeling that this is going to be the game that does that. And with guild specializations, we got combat guilds, trade guilds, exploration guilds. Yeah, and it overall just adds long-term identity according to the Chinese sentiment over the past year. Now, because the game has been running for a year, we do have some logistics. The game has a huge content volume with a 150+ hour campaign. Massive content, but the sentiment that I can see is that the pacing in the early game might be a little slow, and it might be very strange as well if you're not used to these kinds of games. That's why, you know, I remember my experience with Age of Wushu. You really just gotta immerse yourself, but you played through Final Fantasy XIV, so if you can do that, I think you can do anything. This game also is already a success. 30 to 40 million downloads in China, and already I can see on Reddit, on YouTube, this is slowly bubbling, and I think it's gonna burst as soon as this launches. I'm actually looking at the time right now at 4:33. I'm gonna try to get this video out as fast as possible, but I'm pretty sure this is gonna do very well. So allow me to editorialize just a little bit about kind of some things that we know and what it could be. And also, if you're still a little uncomfortable of what this experience is, I know it's very weird and I'm kind of hyping it up in a strange way. I kind of just, let's talk about it, right? So the multi-mode identity thing, like what's going on here? Single player, MMO, what is this? Are they just shotgunning ideas? Not exactly. See, the real concept of this sort of like underground world is that it is a world, and you don't just simply go from gym to gym like Pokemon and fight. There is a little bit more to that, but it is about traveling. It is about meeting new people and crossing paths at different times, doing different things, and this feeling really needs to come out. It's not simply just being invaded like Dark Souls. It's not just simply trading or whatever like you do in Pokemon. There's much more to it, and it all kind of needs to come together. So compared to competitors, let's talk about this. A similar game might be Hogwarts Legacy in terms of the action-adventure RPG with puzzles and characters and story. It might actually be better than the solo-only Hogwarts Legacy in a lot of elements, but it then layers onto that, because imagine Hogwarts Legacy if it was co-op. Now also think of Genshin, where it does technically have co-op, but it's like not even that good. Well, this game can also bleed into an MMO, and the co-op is genuinely like more fleshed out. Like you can really cooperate, you can really travel the world, you can really do some quests and participate and actually help your fellow teammates, especially in terms of like actually, you know, healing someone if they have like broken limbs or whatever. I'm just kind of making that up a little bit, but you know, or maybe just hanging out, really honestly for their RP potentially, which also again you can do in the MMO. And of course, if we do consider even other MMOs such as Final Fantasy XIV, Final Fantasy XIV, even if when you're free to play, you can't party up at all. And regardless, you're not really cooperating. There's a tremendous amount of single player content that's fake co-op, and content that just frankly, it's lonely or literally isolating as you constantly have to go do solo content. This game is going to kind of have a weird wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey experience where you can sort of bleed in and out of all of these game modes, and it all progresses together, maybe debatably enhancing all of it. Now, I want to really dive into it and get a good chew on it before I say so, but just looking at it objectively, frankly, you know, this game is a little bit more MMO than a lot of other MMOs I've played. It's more co-op than some co-op games that I played, and the single player aspect, I mean, 150 hours for free to play, that's substantial. With this quality of gameplay, with the uniquity and the mysticism, yeah, I think it can actually compare to Hogwarts Legacy, so I'm just genuinely excited. Kind of like on all fronts. So I'm a little geeking out because I'm really excited to get into the mythology. I'm really excited to learn about this art form of storytelling, but I'm also kind of a game design nerd, and I'm really excited about the hybridization of these game modes. And especially because I've played so many MMOs where the online component died, which is the only component, so it just dies. It's kind of cool that there's this modular element. So I think that modular MMO design may be the future. This is something that's actually been teased a little bit with RuneScape. They wanted to kind of do their own like official private servers, and we noticed that private servers are really freaking popular right now for World of Warcraft, which it itself is doing seasonal servers and different offshoot versions of World of Warcraft, from classic to the retail to the hardcore. A lot of weird stuff is happening, and who knows, we might even get Classic Plus. I just think that there's something sort of emergent happening with the MMO design space, and we need it. And I think it might just be modularity or this hybrid system. So it's really cool. It lets players choose how social they want to be. It supports multiple player fantasies with basically zero friction, and it creates multiple progression loops that feed into each other. Are you listening, Warframe? Do you get it? Warframe. It's not exactly a siloing of multiple contents, which we kind of see in a lot of games from Guild Wars to World of Warcraft. It's like it's all together, and yet it is at the same time optionally modular. This is, in my opinion, the future of not just MMO design, but online game design. But yes, wuxia benefits from this as well. Again, this is sort of a layering on of the sort of meanings, and I'm no expert. I'm really very novice. Again, I've just barely played Age of Wushu, Swordsman Online, Blade and Soul. I'm gonna be honest, I could rant and name drop a lot of different games, but I'm telling you, even so, I'm very much just a nerd from the America, and I don't know what I'm talking about, because I can so clearly see from this game, finally a crystallization of ideas that is revealing a lens to me that, yeah, no, I have no idea. There's a huge depth to this. I don't really partake of Chinese dramas. I haven't even seen too many kung fu movies, and you know what? I'm just learning that I don't know much. And I think whatever you guys have in your hearts right now, like, oh, I can kind of guess how this is going to be, I promise you can't, actually. As somebody who makes a living off of just like riffing off, you know, what, like knee-jerk reactions, dude, I'm telling you, I don't think I can with this game. I think there's going to be a lot of depth to this and a lot of culture that I really hope we all get to explore together. Yeah, I think that it's really cool that, you know, the wandering sword masters meeting strangers, this whole fantasy of that fits MMOs so well. The duels with real players, you know, the actual fighting like that. I don't know to what extent of competition. Is it going to be an esport like Blade and Soul? I don't know, but I think that's awesome. The guilds mimicking martial sex, literally. You know, like, and it feels like this game actually is doing guilds proper. How many MMOs do you know have genuinely great guild systems? Right? Like maybe there's a guild housing, maybe sometimes it's just a menu, it's a glorified friend list. This game is doing something extra, which again layers to that whole wuxia idea. And then the whole, of course, the life skilling reinforces the cultural fantasy. It all comes together, which I probably have said too much already. The game feels like a living wuxia novel, which I'm saying out of ignorance. I don't know. In fact, am I even pronouncing Jianggu correctly? Martial underworld. This all thrives on these emergent experiences. This design embraces that idea instead of relying on scripted cutscenes just alone. It isn't just look really cool, look really dope, kill some big monsters or whatever, do some kung fu fighting. It's not just that. It's literally everything else and then that. Like, so yeah. Anyways, the cash shop seems fair. It seems like it is whale bait for those who are really like addicted, really like, you know, entranced into this universe. But what game doesn't have like kind of expensive cosmetics? I don't know. Anyways, in finality, this video is already getting a little too long in the tooth, but let's talk about longevity in itself. MMO longevity. Will Western servers have enough populations for the raids, for the guilds? I think at least in the beginning, especially being free to play, you're gonna have a good time. Even in like the niche of these games that I've played, I had a great time, at least during the launch times, but I do feel that this game is going to have a popularity. It is gonna have an intensity, and a lot of people are talking about it. But the longevity of that, well, it's been running for a year in China, and hey, they're having a lot of fun, and I think they are excited to see how we receive this in the West. So hopefully we receive it graciously and understand the cultural export that it is, and to really partake of it with wide open eyes and understand what it means. Now, if there's some things that suck, let's criticize it, let's make it better, but I do think that this is a sincere attempt at exporting culture, and I think that very likely it will be continuously supported for at least a good bit, and we're gonna have a great time. And regardless, the hybrid sort of gameplay experience, even if it's not viral or super bustling, we're gonna find our place within this game. So, does the MMO mode feel alive or empty? Will that continue to be expanded? I think that itself is a bit of an experiment for this company, for this game, for this genre. And I think that regardless of pass or fail, the base experience that it's going to launch with is going to be way worth the time investment. So yeah, where to invest it though? More the single player, playing it hardcore, maybe a little co-op, and then also like how are they investing time into the MMO balance? These are things that we don't know. You know, will players feel forced into the MMO layer for progression's sake? How is it going to work if you are playing hardcore? I'm not really sure. I do plan to play the game in that sense. Does co-op trivialize the story? How does balancing truly work? In some games, even co-op based games, like I know in some Monster Hunters, just playing 2 players might ruin your experience, while playing with 4 players might make it way too easy. We don't know, we have to get into it, but there is actually a lot of customization when it comes to the difficulty of this game, which I was not expecting. To launch with a hardcore mode, to launch with multiple difficulty modes, that's awesome. And yeah, the economy depth. How is the economy gonna work? Are player professions really meaningful? It does seem like they're aiming for that, but does that actually work in actuality? From what I'm reading, as if it was a TTRPG, it seems exciting, so I really hope so, because that's obviously part of the fantasy of what's happening here. And can guild economies evolve organically? Like, in terms of an MMO, you do hope and dream of that, which we get rarely in games like Albion Online, and much less so if it's hyper-controlled like Black Desert Online. Then that kind of just becomes a stock simulator, and it's not exactly the same as what we have like in World of Warcraft Hardcore. And then overall, the narrative cohesion, especially from a Western gamer's perspective, does the multi-mode structure, is that gonna hurt the story? Is it okay that we're kind of jumping in and out of different plot lines? Or maybe the whole thing is kind of built like that. Maybe that is the experience, but are we comfortable with that? I think the West might be a little more interested in a linear cinematic experience, but maybe this is fine? I don't know. It's up in the air, but it's really exciting to see, I think, as an experiment. And are co-op players narratively acknowledged? Probably not. I think you just kind of jump in and help out, but how this all kind of comes together as like an experience, how immersion breaking it is because of the hybrid nature, I don't know, but it does seem like it is built with a respect of that. So I can't wait to try that out myself. And finally, how are we working in terms of like parity when it comes to like the updates? I think a lot of people like to be all on the same page together, especially if this was very popular, a little competitive, you know, especially in the hardcore mode, maybe doing world firsts, things like that with expansions. Will the Western version actually match the content cadence of what has been running in China for a year? We don't know. And will prices change from the Chinese gacha values? How is all of this going to evolve in the future? Are we eventually going to go pay to win? These are all up in the air, but so far this game just seems, once again, like a sincere cultural export, and so I think we can actually probably have a lot of optimism with this title. So with all of that being said, that's everything we know, everything we kind of know, what I feel about it, and really a lot of like philosophizing over the general concept of what the thing is that we're about to play. Hopefully we're about to play. I really think that regardless of whatever this becomes, it is something that we should taste. It is something that we should try and at least acknowledge. I think it might be important. So I do want to ask though, and leave a question. How do you feel about this game basically having MMO as a game mode, or even having multiple ways of playing the game that integrates different players? You know, this is a little different. This is a little weird. And I think we need that. I think we need a little bit of a shakeup in this industry. And I think this could be something that defines and maybe even allows, you know, if you're really creative as an indie dev, maybe potentiality for indie experiences and adventures and worlds to eventually add co-op or MMOs. And I just think that this game could show us a lot of things, you know, not just about China, not just about mythology, not just about this type of storytelling, but in so many different ways. I think it all is really coming together. I wouldn't doubt if people are going to do game design essays on this experience. So I'm extremely excited. I think it's launching literally as soon as I'm done recording. So much love, friends and family. Join the Discord if you guys want to play with me and party up. And I'll see you in the next one.